Inside the HR glass office, the air was ice cold and thick with tension. Across the polished conference table sat Harrison, my manager for 3 years, and Miranda, the head of HR who'd always seemed to have it out for me. No greeting. No small talk. Just a manila folder slapped down in front of me like an accusation. "We've found a $500,000 discrepancy in the quarterly audit," Miranda said, her voice clinical and detached, like she was discussing the weather. "And the access trail leads directly to your login credentials." I stared at them, my brain struggling to process what I was hearing. This had to be some kind of mistake. "That's impossible. I flagged that system glitch months ago in my report. You both saw it, acknowledged it, and promised to fix it." Harrison folded his arms across his chest, his expression colder than I'd ever seen it. "We have to take this seriously, Riley. The evidence is pretty damning, and frankly, it doesn't look good for you." Miranda slid a thick document across the polished table. "You have 2 options here. You can sign this non-disclosure agreement and resign quietly with a neutral reference, or we escalate this to legal action and law enforcement immediately." My hands trembled as I picked up the papers, the weight of the accusation crushing down on me. $500,000. They were accusing me of stealing $500,000 from the company I'd dedicated 4 years of my life to building. "I need time to think about this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You have until Friday," Miranda replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 3 business days to make your decision." As I stood to leave on shaking legs, I noticed something that would change everything, the red blinking light above the security camera in the corner. Still recording every word we'd said. "My name is Riley. And this is the story of how my boss tried to frame me for stealing $500,000. They thought I'd resign quietly. They had no idea I had receipts, and one recording that changed everything. Stick around, because I didn't just clear my name. I ruined theirs." "You're seriously accusing me of stealing $500,000? Without a shred of actual proof beyond some manipulated system logs?" I asked, finding my voice again and trying to project more confidence than I felt. Harrison leaned back in his chair with what I could only describe as a smirk of satisfaction. "The system logs don't lie, Riley. Your credentials accessed the Treasury module 47 times in the past 6 months during suspicious hours. Because that's my job. I'm the senior financial analyst. Of course I access the Treasury module. That's literally what you pay me to do." Miranda's expression didn't change, maintaining cold professionalism. "The timing is convenient, Riley. Large transfers coinciding with your access times, often late at night when no one else was monitoring the system." I felt like I was drowning in quicksand, every word I spoke only making me sink deeper. "This is absolutely insane. You know I didn't do this. You know my work ethics." "What we know," Harrison said slowly, emphasizing each word like he was explaining something to a child, "is that there's a clear pattern here. And patterns don't lie, even when people do." Miranda slid the NDA closer to me across the table with one perfectly manicured finger. "This protects you too, Riley. A resignation looks much better on your record than termination for cause and potential criminal charges. But if you walk out of here without signing..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The threat hung in the air like smoke. I picked up the papers with trembling hands, my mind racing through possibilities and escape routes. Something about this entire situation felt wrong. Very wrong. "I'll be in touch," I said, standing up with as much dignity as I could muster. Before I even reached the lobby downstairs, my badge beeped red at the security turnstiles. Deactivated without ceremony. Security escorted me out like I was a common criminal caught red-handed stealing office supplies. The walk through the open-plan office felt like a death march, with every step echoing in the sudden silence. Whispers rippled through the cubicles as people looked up from their computers to watch the spectacle unfold. I caught sight of Liam, the intern who'd been working on our team for 6 months and always seemed genuinely eager to learn. His face was a picture of stunned disbelief, mouth hanging open like he couldn't process what he was seeing. At least someone looked shocked by this turn of events instead of smugly satisfied. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing and trying to make sense of what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Harrison that made my blood boil. Hope you make the right choice here. This doesn't have to get ugly for anyone involved. I typed back with shaking fingers. You know I didn't do this. You know exactly what kind of person I am. His reply came instantly, casual and dismissive. Relax, Riley. Business is business. Nothing personal about it. Business is business. Like my career, my reputation, and my entire life were just line items on a spreadsheet to be manipulated at will. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with questions that seemed to have no answers. Who had access to my credentials? How could they prove I was stealing money when I'd never stolen so much as a paperclip? And why did Harrison seem so calm about accusing a senior employee of embezzlement? None of it made sense. But one thing was becoming crystal clear. This wasn't a mistake or misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, heart still pounding from the confrontation and my mind racing. I needed to think clearly. That's what I was good at, analyzing data, finding patterns, solving complex problems that others missed. I pulled up the detailed report I'd submitted 3 months ago about the system glitch that was creating vulnerabilities. There it was in black and white, potential vulnerability in Treasury module allowing phantom transactions and unauthorized access. Recommend immediate system patch and comprehensive access audit. Both Harrison and Miranda had received copies of this report with read receipts confirmed. Both had acknowledged receipt with follow-up emails. Both had promised to escalate it to IT for immediate resolution and additional security measures. Apparently, they'd done absolutely nothing to fix the problem. I opened our team's Slack workspace, scrolling back through months of conversations and project discussions. Most of the recent threads looked normal, but something nagged at the back of my mind. I remembered a specific conversation about the glitch where Harrison had seemed unusually dismissive and eager to change the subject. I searched for keywords: Treasury, glitch, vulnerability, security patch. Several threads appeared in the search results, but when I clicked on one I distinctly remembered participating in, it showed as message deleted. Then another showed the same status. And another. Someone had been cleaning house. I'd learned long ago in my career to keep comprehensive backups of everything important. Call it paranoia or professionalism, but I maintained local copies of all our team communications, project files, and audio recordings from meetings on multiple external drives. Digging through my external hard drive archives, I found the deleted Slack conversations intact in my backup files. But it was a specific audio file that made my blood run cold and my hands shake with rage. It was a voice memo from Liam, sent to me 2 months ago but somehow never delivered. Hey Riley, quick question about procedure. Harrison told me to patch some numbers manually in the Treasury module yesterday. He said it was a temporary fix for the glitch you reported, but specifically not to mention it to you since you're swamped with the quarterly report. Is that normal procedure for our team? I'd never received this message. It had been intercepted and deleted before I could see it, buried in a paper shredder. My hands shook as I realized what this meant. Harrison hadn't just ignored my warning about the system vulnerability. He'd been actively exploiting it for months. And now he was pinning the blame on me. But I had something they didn't know about. I always backed up our internal audio files from team meetings and calls. Just in case we needed to reference decisions or clarify project details later for auditing purposes. If Harrison had been careless in our recorded conversations, I'd have proof of his guilt. I spent the next 4 hours combing through audit logs I'd downloaded months ago for routine quarterly analysis. The patterns were there if you knew how to look for them, hidden in plain sight among legitimate transactions. Late-night logins to the Treasury system at unusual hours when the building was empty. Multiple transfers of exactly $47,832.19, a specific number that would blend seamlessly into normal operational transfers, but add up to massive theft over time. But here was the smoking gun. Someone had been using my credentials for these midnight sessions. The IP address traced back to Harrison's home Wi-Fi network, which I recognized from team video calls during the pandemic. Amateur hour. He'd left sloppy prints. I cross-referenced the login times with my personal calendar, photos with timestamps, and even my fitness tracker data for corroboration. On March 15th at 3:14 a.m., when I allegedly transferred $95,664.38, I was sound asleep at home. My fitness tracker showed no movement for 7 straight hours. I carefully screenshotted everything, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and started building a comprehensive timeline. If they wanted to play games with digital evidence and frame an innocent person, I'd show them what real forensic analysis looked like. But the most damning evidence was still waiting in my audio archive. I pulled every recorded team meeting from the past 6 months, loading them into professional audio analysis software I'd used for previous fraud investigations. Most were routine check-ins, project updates, budget reviews, and standard corporate discussions. Nothing suspicious or out of the ordinary. Then I found the quarterly planning call from 8 weeks ago that would change everything. I remembered this meeting clearly because it had run long, and I'd had another important call scheduled right after. In my rush to transition between meetings, I'd forgotten to properly leave the Zoom session, a careless mistake that turned out to be an incredible gift. The recording showed my status as away for the last 15 minutes, but the meeting had continued without me while I was handling other business. I put on headphones and listened carefully to what happened after I'd stepped away from my desk to take the other call. What I heard made my stomach drop. Harrison's voice, clear as day, the vulnerability she flagged is absolutely perfect for this operation. We pinned the missing funds on her, and we're completely in the clear. She's too soft to fight back, and her access logs will look damning enough to convince anyone. Miranda's laughter was like ice water in my veins. She won't even see it coming. Sweet little Riley, always so trusting and naive. Harrison again, his voice full of confidence. I've already started laying the groundwork. Her credentials, my network access. By the time audit season rolls around, the trail will lead straight to her. I played the recording 3 more times, just to be absolutely certain I wasn't hallucinating from stress. Then I ran it through voice verification software to confirm what I already knew. It was definitely Harrison and Miranda, plotting in detail to frame me for their elaborate theft. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type, but I managed to save the audio file with detailed timestamps and export it in multiple formats for different uses. This was nuclear-level evidence that would destroy them both. But I needed to be smart about how I used it. I started researching employment lawyers who specialized in wrongful termination, whistleblower protections, and corporate fraud procedures. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. This was about bringing down 2 people who thought they could destroy my career to cover their criminal tracks. Harrison's voice echoed in my head like a broken record. She's too soft to fight back. He was about to learn just how catastrophically wrong he was about my character. My phone buzzed with another text from him. Still thinking it over? Clock's ticking, Riley. Friday deadline stands firm, no extensions. I didn't respond. I had much more important work to do than engage with his manipulation. Instead, I called the employment law firm that had the highest rating for corporate whistleblower cases and asked for an emergency consultation. The lawyer, Nia Caldwell, listened to my entire story without interruption, taking detailed notes and asking clarifying questions. When I played the audio recording of Harrison and Miranda's conspiracy, her eyebrows shot up and she leaned forward intently. "This is extraordinary evidence," she said, impressed by the quality. "But we need to be strategic about deployment. They're going to claim the recording was tampered with, taken out of context, or illegally obtained. I have complete metadata, original timestamps, and the full Zoom meeting logs to corroborate everything and prove authenticity." Excellent. That's exactly what we need for credibility. Don't sign that NDA under any circumstances whatsoever. A non-disclosure agreement is essentially a legal muzzle. They're trying to buy your silence. Nia explained my options in detail: criminal referral to law enforcement, civil lawsuit for wrongful termination and defamation, or whistleblower complaint to regulatory authorities for investigation. "I want all 3 options pursued simultaneously," I said. Ambitious approach. I like that fighting spirit. But remember, they have significant resources and connections. We need to move fast and hit hard before they can mount a defense. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an email from Miranda. Deadline has been moved up. Sign by tomorrow, Thursday at 5 p.m., or we escalate to law enforcement immediately. They were getting nervous. That was definitely a good sign for my case. They just moved up their timeline, I told Naya, showing her the threatening email. Then we move ours up as well. Do you have any media contacts? I thought back to a case I'd helped with 2 years ago involving financial fraud. An investigative journalist named Camille Rhodes had been exposing corporate fraud throughout the tech sector. I'd provided some crucial financial analysis for her award-winning series on startup embezzlement schemes. I still had her number saved in my contacts. Camille, it's Riley Thompson from the Zentech investigation. Remember me? I hope you're doing well. Of course. Great to hear from you. How are things? Wait, weren't you working at Altafern Financial last time we spoke? I was working there until yesterday, when they falsely accused me of embezzlement. Listen, I've got a story for you that's going to absolutely blow your mind. I gave her the condensed version, the false accusations, the planted evidence, the recorded confession, the conspiracy. I could practically hear her journalist instincts kicking into high gear through the phone. This sounds incredibly dirty and exactly the kind of corporate corruption story my editor loves, she said excitedly. I'm definitely interested. I need this to move fast. They're trying to force me into signing an NDA tomorrow to silence me permanently. Can you get me solid documentation? Audio files, emails, system logs? The more receipts, the better for building an airtight case. I sent her everything, the audio file, the manipulated access logs, the deleted Slack conversations, even screenshots of the increasingly threatening emails. Her response came 20 minutes later. Holy shit, Riley. This is front-page material that could win awards. Give me 24 hours to verify everything. While Camille worked on vetting the story and preparing for publication, I decided to create some immediate pressure on Altafern's business relationships. I created an anonymous email account and started researching their biggest client contracts. Their largest contract was with Northpoint Industries, a massive $15 million annual deal for comprehensive financial consulting and audit services. If Northpoint had any hint that Altafern's internal financial controls were compromised, they'd terminate the contract immediately. I drafted a carefully worded message to Northpoint's CFO. This is a confidential warning from a concerned party with inside knowledge. Altafern Financial is currently covering up a significant embezzlement scheme within their senior management team. Internal audit controls have been compromised for months. Suggest immediate review of all financial reports and recommendations from the Altafern team. I attached selected excerpts from the audio recording and the manipulated access logs as supporting evidence. Sent. Within 2 hours, Northpoint's legal team had contacted Altafern to temporarily suspend the partnership pending clarification of certain serious operational concerns. $15 million contract frozen indefinitely. That would definitely get some urgent attention in the C-suite. My Slack access was still mysteriously active, probably an oversight in their rush to frame me and push me out the door. I decided to make the most of this unexpected opportunity while it lasted. Poking around Harrison's shared folders and cloud storage, I found something that made my jaw drop and my heart race. A file titled coverupbudgetdraft.xlsx, buried in a subfolder. The spreadsheet was a masterpiece of criminal planning, detailed and methodical. Line items included: evidence management, $25,000. Legal consultation, defensive, $50,000. Emergency silence fund, $75,000. Reputation management and PR, $30,000. The total budget for covering up their theft was $180,000. They'd been planning this elaborate frame-up for months, treating it like any other business project. But the most damning entry was at the bottom. Scapegoat severance package, $5,000. R. Thompson, keep minimal to avoid suspicion of guilt or cooperation. $5,000. That's what they thought my silence and my destroyed reputation were worth. I downloaded everything, forwarded copies to Naya and Camille, and saved multiple backups to secure cloud storage. Then I did something that felt incredibly satisfying. I anonymously sent the entire file to Altafern's external audit firm with a detailed note explaining that this represented a client's systematic attempt to obstruct their investigation. The response was swift and decisive. By Thursday morning, the audit firm had announced an emergency comprehensive review of Altafern's books and practices, effective immediately. Company-wide panic mode activated throughout the building. Miranda sent a frantic, threatening email to all staff, effective immediately. Any employee caught leaking confidential internal data to external parties will face immediate termination and legal prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. Too little, too late. The damage was already done and spreading. My phone rang, an unknown number with a local area code. "Riley, we need to talk urgently." It was Harrison, calling from what sounded like a burner phone, his voice tense and strained. "I don't think we have anything to discuss at this point. Look, you've made your point crystal clear. But if this investigation keeps going and expanding, we're both going to drown. The company's going to implode, and everyone loses their jobs." I hit record on my phone app. "Interesting theory. Tell me more about your concerns. I didn't think you had this kind of fight in you, honestly. But you're in over your head now. There are bigger players involved in this than just me and Miranda." "What kind of bigger players are we talking about?" "The board knows about the financial irregularities we've been managing. They've been looking the other way because the profits were good. If this gets out publicly, it's not just our careers on the line here." Beautiful. He was essentially confessing to a broader conspiracy while trying to threaten me into submission. I immediately sent the recording of Harrison's desperate call to both Naya and Camille for their respective purposes. The admission that the board was complicit took this from simple embezzlement to a complex conspiracy involving senior leadership. Camille called me an hour later, breathless with excitement and enthusiasm. "Story drops Monday morning, front page of the business section. My editor is calling it the Altafern scandal and clearing space for a full spread. But legal is trying to bury it. They've got influence with the paper's ownership. We're in a race against time here. What do you need from me to make this bulletproof? Go public with the board. Use their own corporate channels against them before they can spin the narrative." I had an idea that felt both terrifying and empowering. Altafern's board of directors had their email addresses prominently listed on the company website for transparency. I crafted a detailed message from my personal email account. "Dear board members, by now you're aware of the external audit investigation. You should also be aware that senior management has been systematically embezzling funds and attempting to frame innocent employees for their crimes. I have clear recordings of Harrison Miller and Miranda Walsh planning this scheme in detail. I also have evidence suggesting board-level awareness and complicity in financial irregularities. This can end quietly and internally, or it can end publicly with media attention. Your choice entirely." I attached the audio file and hit send to all 7 board members simultaneously. My phone started ringing within 10 minutes of delivery. "Ms. Thompson, this is Board Chair Kenneth Walsh. I think we need to have a conversation." Walsh. As in Miranda Walsh. Family connection. That explained so much about the power dynamics and protection. "I'm listening to whatever you have to say. There's been a tremendous misunderstanding here, and we'd like to invite you to a private video conference to discuss potential resolution options." "When would this meeting take place?" "This afternoon. 3 p.m. sharp. Zoom link will follow within the hour." I agreed, but not without significant precautions. I called Naya to have her listen in on another device, and I set up screen recording software to capture everything that was said. At 3 p.m. sharp, I joined a Zoom call with 5 board members, their faces tense and worried. "Ms. Thompson," Kenneth began with forced politeness, "we want to assure you that the board takes these serious allegations very seriously indeed." "Allegations?" "I have clear recordings of your head of HR planning to frame me for embezzlement she committed." "Yes, we've reviewed your evidence thoroughly. We're prepared to take immediate and decisive action to resolve this matter." "What kind of action are we talking about specifically?" "Harrison Miller and Miranda Walsh will be placed on administrative leave pending a full internal investigation. We're also prepared to offer you a substantial settlement to resolve this matter quickly and quietly." "How substantial are we talking?" $200,000, plus a written public apology and completely cleared personnel record. It was a good offer, better than I'd expected. But I wasn't done fighting yet. I appreciate the offer, I told the board carefully, but I need some time to consider it with my attorney and weigh all my options. What I really needed was for Camille's story to go live and create public pressure. A public expose would be worth more than any private settlement they could offer. That evening, Harrison called again from his burner phone. This time he sounded desperate and panicked. Riley, whatever you're planning next, you need to stop immediately. There are people involved in this who don't play nice when cornered. Is that supposed to be a threat, Harrison? It's a warning from someone who's in too deep to get out clean. Then maybe you should have thought about the consequences before you decided to steal $500,000 and frame me for it. You don't understand the full situation. The money, it wasn't supposed to be permanent. We were going to put it back before anyone noticed. Put it back? Harrison, you've been quietly skimming funds for months. This wasn't a temporary loan, this was organized theft. Look, I'll make you a deal right now. I'll confess to everything, take full responsibility. Complete confession, clear your name entirely. But you have to kill the media story. Interesting. He was more afraid of public exposure than legal consequences or prison time. Why would you suddenly do that for me? Because if this goes public, my wife finds out everything. My kids find out what their father really is. My career is over permanently, not just paused. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, but not quite. I'll consider your offer, I said, knowing I'd already made my choice. Monday morning, Camille's explosive article went live. Embezzlement scheme rocks Alta Fern Financial. Senior executives caught on tape planning to frame innocent employee. The story was absolutely devastating. Direct quotes from the audio recording, detailed analysis of the manipulated access logs, and confirmation from multiple sources about the board's knowledge of ongoing financial irregularities. Within an hour, Altafern's stock price had dropped 15% and was still falling. By noon, the SEC had announced a formal investigation into the company's practices. My phone was ringing nonstop, reporters seeking interviews, lawyers offering services, job recruiters with opportunities. I ignored most of them to focus on the important calls. But one call I definitely took, Kenneth Walsh, and he sounded furious. You've made a serious mistake, Miss Thompson, and there will be consequences. Have I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I've simply exposed the truth about criminal behavior. You've destroyed a company that employs 200 hardworking people. Those lost jobs are on your conscience now. No, Kenneth. Those jobs are on the conscience of the people who decided that stealing was more important than integrity and honest business practices. Naya called an hour later with incredible news. 3 more whistleblowers have come forward since the story broke this morning. Apparently, Harrison and Miranda's scheme was much bigger and more systematic than we initially thought. The house of cards was falling faster than anyone had anticipated. By Tuesday, both Harrison and Miranda had been arrested and charged. The formal charges included embezzlement, conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and wire fraud. Kenneth Walsh resigned from the board to focus on family matters and personal obligations. Translation: to distance himself from his daughter's criminal activity and avoid further scrutiny. The external audit revealed that the actual theft totaled $1.2 million over 18 months, not the $500,000 they'd accused me of stealing. Harrison had been sophisticated enough to spread it across multiple accounts and vendors, but not sophisticated enough to avoid detection once people started looking carefully. My settlement offer increased dramatically to $350,000 plus all legal fees covered. I accepted. More importantly, Altafern issued a company-wide email that restored my reputation. We want to publicly apologize to Riley Thompson for the completely false accusations made against her by former management. Ms. Thompson's integrity and professionalism were never in question, and we deeply regret any damage to her reputation. She has been fully exonerated of all accusations and cleared of any wrongdoing. It felt incredible to have my name cleared publicly. But the best part was yet to come. The justice system moved surprisingly quickly once the evidence was overwhelming. Harrison pled guilty to embezzlement and conspiracy. Miranda, as the ringleader and family connection, got 5 to 7 years. Both were ordered to pay full restitution plus substantial penalties and fines. During Harrison's sentencing hearing, I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. Harrison Miller didn't just steal money from his employer. He stole my reputation, my sense of security in the workplace, and my trust in the system. He was willing to completely destroy my career to cover his tracks. That kind of betrayal cuts deep and changes you. The judge nodded gravely before imposing the maximum sentence within the plea agreement guidelines. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked me how I felt about the final outcome. Justice served, I said simply, but inside I felt incredibly vindicated. But the real victory came 2 weeks later when opportunity knocked. Apex Financial, one of Altafern's biggest competitors and most respected firms, offered me a position as Senior Director of Financial Integrity, essentially their Chief Anti-Fraud Officer. The salary was 40% higher than my previous position, plus equity and comprehensive benefits. During the final interview, the CEO smiled warmly and said, "We read about what you did at Altafern. That's exactly the kind of ethical backbone and courage we want on our team." My first day at Apex, I found a welcome gift on my desk, a framed copy of Camille's article about the Altafern scandal. The note attached read, "To our newest team member, thank you for proving that integrity still matters in business. Welcome to a company that values truth." The Apex team. I hung it on my office wall as a daily reminder. 6 months later, I received a thoughtful LinkedIn message from Liam, the intern who'd been unknowingly caught up in Harrison's scheme. "Riley, I wanted to thank you for what you did and apologize for my part. I've been beating myself up for months about that voice memo I sent. I should have insisted on talking to you directly instead of just following Harrison's orders blindly. Your courage to fight back inspired me to speak up when I see something wrong. I'm working at a nonprofit now, helping small businesses detect financial fraud. Thank you for showing me what real integrity looks like." That message meant more to me than any settlement check or job offer. I also heard through industry connections that Harrison was having a particularly hard time in prison. Apparently, white-collar criminals who steal from their own companies aren't very popular with the general prison population. Miranda had been transferred to a minimum security facility, but was still facing additional civil lawsuits from investors who'd lost money when Altafern's stock collapsed after the scandal. Justice served, indeed. 1 year after the scandal broke, I was invited to speak at a major conference for corporate compliance officers and financial professionals. My topic: When the System Fails, a Whistleblower's Guide to Fighting Back and Winning. The audience was packed with over 500 attendees. Apparently, my story had become legendary in financial and compliance circles. During the Q&A, someone asked, "What advice would you give to someone who suspects fraud but is afraid to speak up and face retaliation?" "Document everything meticulously," I said firmly. "Never assume the system will protect you. You have to protect yourself first. And remember, silence isn't safety or self-preservation. Silence is permission for the corruption to continue and harm others." After my presentation, a young auditor approached me nervously. "I think my manager is manipulating expense reports and hiding losses. I have some evidence, but I'm terrified to report it." I gave her my business card. "Call me. Let's talk and figure out a strategy." If my experience could help even one person stand up to corruption, then everything I'd been through was absolutely worth it. I smiled, remembering Harrison's words from that first day in HR, "She's too soft to fight back." He'd learned the hard way how wrong he was about that. But honestly, the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's building a life so successful and meaningful that their attempts to tear you down become the foundation of your greatest achievements. When people try to bury you, don't just survive. Become the one who writes their ending. So that's my story. What would you have done? Craving more secrets, lies, and betrayal? This is just the beginning. Hit subscribe. You won't believe what comes next.